Tonight, we will travel very slowly and very gently to a place the ancient Greeks spoke of only in soft and careful voices. It was not, to them, a place of fear, but a place of rest, the quiet country where every soul eventually goes to lay its burdens down. They called it the underworld, the realm of Hades, and they imagined it far below the roots of the mountains and the deep floors of the sea, in a stillness so complete that no wind ever stirred it. There is no need, tonight, to be afraid of this place, for we are only visitors, walking through it the way you might wander a vast, dim museum long after everyone else has gone home. Let the old story move over you slowly, the way cool water moves over smooth stones, and let each word loosen something in you that has been held tight all day. You do not need to remember any of the names. You do not need to follow every path. You need only let yourself drift downward, gently, the way a single leaf drifts down through still evening air, turning slowly, in no hurry at all to land. And so we begin our slow descent, past the sunlit world you know, down through the quiet dark, toward the shore of a very old and very patient river. The first thing the old stories describe is a river, wide and slow and silver in the gloom, called the Styx. Its waters did not rush or foam the way rivers do in the waking world. They moved slowly, almost thoughtfully, curling in long lazy loops through the grey country of the dead. Along its near bank, the newly arrived souls would gather quietly, drawn there the way tired travelers are drawn toward the lights of an inn. And waiting for them, always, was a single figure in a narrow wooden boat, an old ferryman named Charon, with a lantern hung at his bow and a long pole in his weathered hands. He was not cruel, only ancient and unhurried, having done this same gentle work since the beginning of time. One by one, he would carry the souls across the dark water, the boat gliding so smoothly it barely left a ripple behind. The crossing was said to be strangely peaceful, the water lapping softly against the hull, the far shore drawing slowly nearer through the mist. And as each soul stepped quietly onto the other side, it felt something it had not felt in a very long time, a deep and settling calm, the sense of a long journey finally, gently, coming to its end. Beyond the far shore of the river stood the great gates of the underworld, and before them lay a creature the Greeks called Cerberus, the hound who guarded the threshold. He was often described as a great dog with 3 heads, and though that may sound fearsome, tonight let us see him as he truly was in his quiet hours, an old and faithful guardian, curled at the entrance, dozing in the dim light. His task was a simple one, and he performed it patiently. He watched the gate. He let the quiet souls pass gently inward, and he asked only that none of them try to leave again, for the underworld was a place of rest, and rest, once begun, was not meant to be broken. Most of the time, the great hound simply slept, his 3 heads resting one upon another, his breathing slow and deep and even, rising and falling like a tide. The souls passing by would sometimes pause to look at him, this enormous, drowsy sentinel, and feel oddly comforted by his presence, the way a child feels comforted by a large dog sleeping by the fire. And past him, through the wide and silent gates, the true country of the dead opened out before them, vast and grey and endlessly calm. The realm beyond the gates was not a single place, but many quiet regions, each one holding a different kind of stillness. The largest by far were the Fields of Asphodel, a vast grey meadow stretching farther than any eye could follow, filled with pale, silver-white flowers that swayed very slightly, though no wind ever seemed to touch them. Here wandered the great majority of souls, the ordinary people who had lived ordinary lives, neither famous heroes nor terrible villains, only quiet folk who had loved and worked and grown tired, just as most of us do. They moved slowly through the pale meadow, calm and unhurried, their old worries fading from them like morning mist burning away in gentle sun. There was no pain here, and no labor, and no need to be anywhere at all. Time itself seemed to slow in the Fields of Asphodel, stretching long and soft, until an hour and 100 years felt very much the same. Some of the souls simply rested among the flowers. Others walked in quiet, drifting circles, following no path in particular. and over all of them lay a deep and dreamless peace, the kind of peace you might feel yourself beginning to feel now, as your own thoughts slow, and soften, and drift like pale flowers in a windless field. Deep in the heart of this realm stood a great dark palace, and within it dwelt the lord of the underworld himself, Hades, brother of Zeus and Poseidon. He was not, as many later imagined him, a wicked or a cruel god. He was solemn and quiet and just, a patient ruler who kept the vast, still country of the dead in careful order. He rarely left his shadowed halls, and he rarely raised his voice, for the dead required no shouting, only steadiness, and steadiness was something Hades had in endless supply. Beside him, for part of each year, sat his queen, Persephone, whose story we will come to soon. Together they governed the underworld not as jailers, but as careful keepers of a great and solemn stillness. Hades sat upon a throne of dark polished stone, and from there he watched over all the quiet regions of his realm, making certain that every soul found its proper place of rest. There was, in his stern and silent presence, something oddly reassuring, the sense of a firm and steady hand guiding everything gently toward calm. And in the deep hush of his great hall, where torches burned low and slow and never guttered out, even the restless found, at last, that they could finally be still. The Greeks believed that when a soul first arrived, it would come before three quiet judges, wise old kings from the world above named Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. They sat together in a dim and solemn chamber, and their task was gentle rather than harsh, simply to look upon each life that had been lived, and to see it clearly and fairly, and to send each soul onward to the place where it would rest most peacefully. There was no cruelty in their judging, only a deep and ancient fairness, the kind that sees the whole of a life at once, its small kindnesses and its quiet struggles, and understands. Those who had lived gently and well were guided toward a place of light and ease. Those who had wandered through ordinary lives were sent to the calm grey meadows. And the judges worked slowly, without hurry, for the dead had all the time in the world, and there was no need ever to rush. It was said that standing before them felt not like standing trial, but like finally being truly seen, and understood, and gently forgiven for all the small things one had carried and regretted. And once the judging was done, each soul was released, lighter than before, toward its long and quiet rest. For those who had lived with great kindness, or courage, or gentleness of heart, there was a place the Greeks loved to imagine above all others. They called it Elysium, the Elysian fields, and it was the most beautiful and peaceful corner of the whole underworld. Here the grey gave way at last to soft and golden light, and the air was warm and sweet, and gentle breezes moved through meadows greener than any in the waking world. In Elysium there was no toil and no sorrow, only rest, and music, and the quiet company of others who had lived well. Rivers ran clear and slow through soft green banks. Fruit hung ripe from unhurried trees. Souls reclined in the warm grass beneath a sky that held forever the deep gold of a late summer evening, the most peaceful hour of the most peaceful day. Some sang softly. Some talked in low, contented voices. Many simply lay back and rested, feeling the warm light on their faces, needing nothing, wanting nothing, complete at last. It was, the Greeks believed, the truest reward a soul could earn, not riches, not glory, but this, a deep and endless peace, a rest so gentle and so complete that it could never again be disturbed by any care. Woven through the underworld ran several rivers, each one carrying its own quiet meaning. There was the Styx, which we have already crossed, and the Charon, the river of woe, and the Cocytus, the river of lamentation. But of them all, the most gentle, and the most merciful, was the river called Lethe, the river of forgetting. Its waters were still and dark and smooth as glass, and it was said that any soul who drank from them would feel their old memories loosen and float gently away, like leaves carried off on a slow current. This was not a cruel forgetting, but a kind one. The souls who drank from Lethe let go of their sorrows, their regrets, the heavy things they had carried through their lives, until nothing remained but a deep and untroubled calm. Imagine it for a moment, all the small worries of your day, the things left undone, the words you wish you had or had not said, all of them loosening their grip, drifting away downstream, growing smaller and smaller until they vanish entirely into the quiet dark. That is the gift the River Lethe offered, and perhaps it is a gift you can begin to give yourself tonight, letting each heavy thought slip loose, and float away, and leave you lighter, and calmer, and ready, at last, for rest. No tale of the underworld would be complete without the story of its queen, Persephone, and the gentle myth the Greeks told to explain the turning of the seasons. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and one quiet day, while gathering flowers in a sunlit meadow, she was drawn down into the underworld to become its queen. Her mother, missing her, let the world above grow cold and bare, and so the first winter came, quiet and white and still. But an agreement was reached, gentle and fair. For part of each year Persephone would remain below with Hades, and for part she would return to her mother in the light above. And so, the Greeks believed, the seasons turned. When Persephone rose into the upper world, her mother rejoiced, and spring bloomed, and summer ripened warm and golden. And when she descended once more to her quiet throne below, the world grew still and cool and slept beneath its blanket of snow, resting, gathering its strength, waiting patiently for her return. It was a story not of loss, but of gentle rhythm, of descent and return, of rest and waking, the same slow rhythm your own body follows every single night, sinking down into sleep, and rising, renewed, with the morning light. There is one last story the Greeks told of the underworld, tender and a little sad, the tale of Orpheus, the greatest musician who ever lived. When his beloved Eurydice died, Orpheus was so filled with quiet grief that he did something no living soul had dared. He walked down into the underworld itself, carrying only his lyre, to ask for her back. And as he went, he played. His music was so gentle, so full of love and sorrow, that the whole realm of the dead grew still to listen. The wheel of torment paused. The restless souls fell quiet. Even stern Hades, upon his throne of stone, felt something soften in his ancient heart. Moved by the music, Hades agreed Eurydice could follow Orpheus back to the light, on one gentle condition, that he not look back at her until they had both reached the world above. And so they climbed, the musician and his love, up through the quiet dark. We need not dwell tonight on how the story ends, only on the beauty of that moment, a song so tender it stilled the whole of death itself, and a love that walked willingly into the dark for the smallest chance of light. Let that gentleness settle over you now, soft as the last note of a fading song. And so we come, slowly, to the end of our long, quiet journey through the realm of Hades. We have crossed the silver river, and passed the drowsing hound, and wandered the pale and peaceful meadows. We have seen the just and steady Lord upon his throne, the golden light of Elysium, the merciful waters of forgetting, and heard the tenderest song ever sung in the dark. And through it all, one truth has drifted quietly beneath everything, like a slow current beneath still water, that the underworld, to the ancient Greeks, was never truly a place of fear. It was a place of rest. A place where every burden is finally set down, where every tired soul is welcomed gently, where the long day of a life gives way at last to a deep and dreamless peace. There is nothing more, tonight, that you need to do. There is nowhere else that you need to be. Let your breathing settle, slow and soft and even. Let the pale flowers sway in their windless field. Let the old ferryman guide his quiet boat across the still, dark water. And let yourself drift, gently and without fear, down through the soft and welcoming dark, into a deep, and peaceful, and untroubled sleep.